Today's objective is one-step equations. We have definitions. A solution is the value of the variable that makes the equation true. Your solution is going to be your answer. So basically x would equal 5. That would be your solution for a particular equation. Inverse operations are operations that undo each other. So addition undoes subtraction. Subtraction undoes addition because these two things are opposites. Multiplication undoes division, as does division undo multiplication. So just remember that addition and subtraction undo each other, multiplication and division undo each other. An equation is a mathematical sentence with an equal sign. In order for something to be an equation, we must have the equal sign. There's a golden rule of algebra. Whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you must also do to the other. Think of the equation as a balance beam, the equal sign being the middle. Whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you must be equal and do it to the other side. Addition property of equality. For every real number, a, b, and c, if a is equal to b, then if we have a plus c, it's going to equal b plus c. Basically, if I have an equation like this, and I add the same thing to both sides, okay, so I added a 4 to both sides. That equation is still going to be equal because I did the same thing to both sides. Okay, and that's pretty much what the rest of this board says. The subtraction property of equality states the same thing. Okay, if I have the same equation and I do something to one side, but I keep it equal and do the same thing to the other side with subtraction, this is still going to be equal. Okay. Multiplication property of equality. I have an equation. I multiply both sides by 2. That equation is still going to be true. It's still going to be equal. And it works the same for division. Division property of equality. 3 plus 1 equals 4 is my equation. If I divided both sides by 2, I'm still going to have an equal statement. Very important concept number 1. You want, excuse me, my marker rubbed off here. You want the variable positive and by itself on one side of the equal sign. This will give you your solution. You have to have the variable alone. In other words, you can't have it say 8x equals something. I want just x. I want to know what x is. And also it can't be negative. Okay, so you can't have negative x equaling something. I want positive x equals an answer. Okay, we're going to use inverse operations to get the variable by itself. So if I have 10 plus x equaling 15, I'm going to look and I'm going to say, well, this is plus x, okay, or plus 10. I'm trying to get the x alone. Okay, in order to do that, I have to get rid of this 10. Because it's plus, we talked earlier that the addition property and subtraction property of equality, addition and subtraction undo each other. So I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides because 10 minus 10 gives me 0, and that's what I want. But as long as I do it to both sides, I still have an equivalent expression or equation. So I subtract 10, x equals 5. Okay. Now, to check your answer, all you have to do is plug 5 back into the equation. So you write the original equation, plug 5 in and see if it equals. If it equals, then you know you are correct. If it does not equal, you have done something wrong. Okay? You need to check all of your answers so that you make sure that you get all the answers correct. Examples continued. We have negative 18 plus y equals 12. So again, we're trying to get the y alone. Okay, so I have to get rid of the 18. This is a negative 18. The opposite of a negative is a positive. So we're going to add 18 to both sides to make that equal 0. Y would equal 30. Okay, if you want to check, just plug 30 back in for y. Okay, negative 18 plus 30 equals 12. Is that a true statement? Yes, it is. 12 would equal 12. Therefore, your solution of y equals 30 is correct. Okay. Number 3, we had negative 5n equaling 25. Whenever my coefficient and my variable are touching, remember that is multiplication. To undo multiplication, we must divide. So we're going to divide both sides by -5. 1n equals -5. Okay, so n equals -5. If you want to check it, plug -5 or plug your solution back in for n. -5 times -5 equals 25. That is a true statement. So 25 equals 25 is, so your solution of -5 is correct. Okay. If I have a fraction and I have 3/4 times x equaling 9, to undo this, let's multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is just your fraction flipped over. So you're going to multiply both sides by 4/3. Because if you were to do this, and you had 4/3 times 3/4, you'd end up with 12/12, correct? So that just gives me 1. And that's okay. That's what I want. So if I multiply these together, I end up with 1x. But remember, I must do the same thing to both sides. So when I multiply by 4/3, I get 36/3. So 1x, or x, 36 divided by 3 is 12. So here is my solution. If I wanted to check it, I just plug 12 back in for x. 3/4 times 12 equals 9. That is a true statement. So 9 equals 9. Check. All right, let's practice. I have -3.5 equals m minus 2.5. I'm trying to get the m alone. Just because it's on the right side of my equation doesn't mean I don't need to get it alone. Okay? So this is minus. So the opposite of subtraction is plus. So whatever we do to one side, we must also do to the other. I always like to do that, so you see that you have two sides. So this would equal 0. So we would have m minus 0, which is what we want, because that's just m. And then -3.5 plus 2.5 is going to give me a -1. Okay, so my solution would be m equals -1. Now, to check, I take the original equation and I plug in -1. So it would be -3.5 would in fact equal a -3.5. Okay, check. Because they are equivalent, I know that my solution is correct. All right, let's look at number 2. Y minus a -4 is the same thing as saying y plus a +4. Remember your integer rules of adding the opposite. So this is really y plus 4 equaling 6. So to get y by itself, I'm going to do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. You're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and y would equal 2. So let's plug it back in to check. Y minus a -4 equals 6. Well, is 2 minus a -4 equivalent to 6? Well, if I add the opposite, it is 6 equals 6. Check. 1/4 x equals a -10. Again, if we have something like this with a fraction and a variable being multiplied, let's go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. Really, you are dividing by 1/4, but when you divide by 1/4, isn't that the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, if you remember your division rules? So you are going to say 1/4 x times 4/1. Remember, you must do the same thing to both sides. Okay? So you're going to end up with x, because this would be 4/4, which is 1x, okay, would equal a -40. So let's go ahead and plug it in and check, make sure we're right. You write down your original equation. And we say, is 1/4 x equivalent to, or 1/4, excuse me, times a -40 equivalent to a -10? And it is. So -10 would equal -10. Okay? All right, if I'm looking at n divided by a -5 equals 30, This is division. The opposite of division is multiplication. So we're going to multiply both sides by a -5 to get that n alone. This would cancel out because -5 divided by -5 is 1, which is what I want. I want 1n. And -5 times 30, or times the -30, excuse me, is 150. Okay. So let's make sure that this works. Let's check. If I have n divided by a -5 equaling 30, -30, and I say 150 divided by a -5 equals a -30, is that a true statement? Yes, it is, because 5 fits into 15 3 times. So -30 would equal -30. So therefore, your solution of n equals 150 is correct.